This is the Sittingbourne Steam Railway podcast. Hello and welcome to the 5th Sittingbourne Steam Railway podcast. My name is Paul Best and I'm the Railway's press officer and your host for this podcast. This month we will be looking at the development of the steam locomotive fleet, leading to the purchase of Alpha, Triumph and Superb during the virtual journey to Kemsley Down. On arrival, we will have the latest news and updates from the various departments, and on the return trip we will look at what's happening at the railway in June and July. In onward connections, I'll tell you about the Great Whipsnade Railway. Let's board the train now. Last month we looked at steam revolution at Sittingbourne paper mill, with locomotives Premier and Leader taking over from horses, through to the extension of the railway to Viaduct Dock. By the time the line was being extended, the First World War had broken out, but the dock had not been completed. This extension involved the construction of Milton Regis Viaduct for the first section of the 3.5 mile line. We will look at this in more detail in podcast 9 in October 2017. The line was handed over to the Admiralty in 1915 and control was assumed by the Royal Arsenal Railway in Woolwich. It was handed back to Edward Lloyd Limited in 1919, the dock having been completed in 1917. So now, with an extra 3.5 miles to cover, more engines were needed. As mentioned last month, Premier, Leader and Excelsior were purchased off the shelf Brazil class locomotives from Kerr Stewart, so it made sense to return to that manufacturer to see if they had anything slightly bigger, and so Superior arrived in 1920 from the Barretto or Maitri class. This locomotive was an 062 tank engine, which means, as you'll remember from last month, that it has no unpowered wheels, 6 driving wheels and 2 unpowered wheels under the cab. Where the Brazil class locomotives have been saddle tanks with the water tank over the top of the boiler, similar to a horse's saddle, this engine had water tanks on either side of the boiler. A new mill was being planned at Kemsley Down, a hill close to Viaduct Dock, so more locomotives were required. This time from different suppliers. First, in 1921, was a 4-wheeled battery electric shunting locomotive from English Electric, nicknamed the Tank. Then W.G. Bagnall built an 062 tank engine named Conqueror, which arrived in 1922. Too heavy for Milton Regis Viaduct, it was mainly used between the new mill when it opened in 1923 and the dock. Another small locomotive was required, so Brazil class 042 saddle tank Melia arrived in 1924 from Kerr Stewart. The same year, a large narrow gauge locomotive arrived from Bagnall's. Unique, a 240 fireless locomotive, and 5 years later another 040 fireless locomotive called Victor. We will look at these and the tank next month. Traffic continued to increase across the network, so more locomotives were needed, but these had to be able to operate over the viaduct. Kerr Stewart and Company had gone into liquidation, but the chief design had been taken on by Bagnall's, and that led to the construction of Alpha in 1932, an 062 tank engine based on the Barretto design, but built by Bagnall. The second locomotive of the same type was delivered just 2 years later, Triumph, and a third in 1940 named Superb. During the Second World War, a second-hand locomotive was purchased. It was a Bagnall 040 tank engine called Rattler and was not successful, being dismantled in 1945. Another second-hand purchase was Chevalier, when steam operations ceased on the Chattenden and Upnor Railway, a military railway near Rochester. This locomotive had been built by Manning Wardle in 1915 and was an 062 tank engine. Like Conqueror, it was too heavy for the Viaduct, so confined to Riddham Dock and Kemsley paper mill. 1953 saw a dramatic change in the locomotive fleet with the purchase of the huge 0440 tank engine called Monarch. That's right, I didn't stutter, the locomotive was articulated, so it had two powered four-wheel bogies carrying its long frame and boiler. The articulated design meant it could operate over the viaduct as the weight was distributed over the 8 wheels. There was another purchase that year, a four-wheeled diesel mechanical locomotive, now named Victor. To finish this section, let's have a look at those locos again and find out where they are now. We looked at Premier, Leader, Excelsior and Amelia last month. Superior is now at the Great Whipsnade Railway. The tank was scrapped in 1928, according to Wikipedia, but it may have been later than that. Conqueror was sold to Whipsnade, but is now part of the Vallevidal Railway Museum collection. Victor was scrapped in 1953. Alpha, Triumph and Superb remain at the railway, and Rattler was scrapped in 1945. Chevalier was sold to Whipsnade and then resold to Bill Parker. It visited the railway in 2005 for the Century of Steam celebrations. Monarch was sold to the Welshpool and Llanfair Light Railway, where it is now on static display. The 3 standard locomotives are Alpha, Triumph and Superb, and these were chosen to remain at the railway by the Locomotive Club of Great Britain, as they were the newest and all 3 are identical, which makes operation and maintenance much easier. Alpha wasn't operational when the LCGB took over and hasn't actually operated in preservation, and has clocked up a massive 4 miles since preservation, towed dead to Sittingbourne and towed back again. This was as Gate Guardian at Sittingbourne and made an imposing first sight of the railway as you climbed the stairs to the station, particularly as then the engine was painted silver for Her Majesty the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977. Over the last couple of years, work has started on the cosmetic overhaul of Alpha. This will show everyone what the locomotive will look like and ensure that the degradation caused by standing in the open for all these years is halted. Our younger members are working on this and will use it as training for the eventual restoration to service, which is hoped to be carried out in the late 2020s. Triumph is operational until the closure of the line in 2008 and is currently waiting in the wings for an overhaul. Whilst it hasn't operated since 2008, it still has travelled 19,770 miles since 1969. Superb is operational and travelled 368 miles in 2016 and 20,278 since 1969, the most of all the locomotives. In the league table of locomotive mileages, Superb is first and Triumph is second. Poor old Alpha is 6th of 6 steam locomotives and 9th of 9 overall. Unique is not included in these figures as the locomotive is for static display and unlikely to ever return to service. So finally, let's have a listen to the locomotives at work. We'll start with Triumph pulling what could have been the last ever passenger train out of Sittingbourne Viaduct back in 2008. And this is Superb departing Sittingbourne Viaduct station last year. Next month we will look at the unusual locomotives, Unique, Victor, Monarch and the Tank. Then in August we will look at the diesel locomotive fleet. And so we arrive at Kemsley Down, and the end of this part of the podcast.
Welcome to Kemsley Down, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all change please. Please leave the platform by the ramp and foot crossing at the rear of the train.
Attention please, here is a special announcement. Jack the Station Cat, Grovehurst Dockside Miniature Railway, Teddy Bear's Picnic, help needed for steam and beer. Jack the Station Cat and Edward Bear weekend was held on the 30th of April and 1st of May and saw many happy children visiting the railway. And of course the opening of the Grovehurst Dockside Miniature Railway by Roger Dilley, an illustrator of the Jack the Station Cat series of books. There is no additional fare to ride on the 5-inch gauge miniature railway, but passengers are welcome to make a donation towards its upkeep. It will operate whenever there are qualified volunteers on site to do so. Whilst there, Roger also unveiled a new cat statue to commemorate our long-standing relationship with Jack the Station Cat and the many wild cats that have made the railway home over the years. The Teddy Bear's Picnic was a great success with over 100 passengers on the first train. The weather held out and made it a very enjoyable day, although staff shortages did reduce the catering and lead to the miniature railway only operating in the afternoon. We are very short of bands for the Steam and Beer event on the 1st of July and are looking for volunteers to help with the various roles, both operational and non-operational, during the event. To offer help, bands should email info@sklr.net and to volunteer at sklr.net. Now a quick look at what's been going on at the various departments. The Garden Railway has been running when the railway is open. In the engine shed, Melia and Superb are operational and Leader should be back in service this month. New hoses have been fitted to diesel locomotive Edward Lloyd as the previous ones have perished. The Permanent Way team are still exceedingly busy replacing sleepers on Milton Regis Viaduct. This is one of several structures that will be replaced this year. If you fancy a good workout, they would be only too pleased to hear from you or see you on a Wednesday or Sunday. Email volunteer@sklr.net for more information. The shop is now stocking a new book featuring the railway in the author's tour of narrow gauge railways in the UK. I met Chris Arnott, the author, at Sittingbourne National Rail Station on the last Wednesday in July last year. We chatted about his recent trip to narrow gauge Mecca, also known as Wales, and I prepared him for something a little different. Our chapter in the book details Chris's visit and the people he met: Jacqueline the fireman, Martin the driver, and Liz, the railway's chairman, who was in catering that day. It is a great read and we are delighted to appear in it. I thought the book was going to be an AA guide to narrow gauge railways with maps and details of the railways. However, it is a charming travellogue akin to Bill Bryson. We are the second of 17 narrow gauge railways featured in the book. The title of the book is Small Island by Little Train, a narrow gauge adventure, written by Chris Arnott and published by the AA, and priced at £16.99. For more information, visit the shop at Kemsley Down or email sales@sklr.net. The Footplate Cafe has reopened for the season and is serving hot and cold drinks. The variety of hot and cold food varies due to supplies and staffing levels. We do still need more volunteers in this department. Sandwiches and hot food are prepared to order, so it may take some time to prepare and deliver the food to you, particularly on busy days. There have been some days recently where we nearly could not open the cafe due to lack of volunteers. In fact, we are short of volunteers to operate the railway too. To offer help, training will be provided. Please email volunteer@sklr.net. The biggest event of the year is fast approaching. Yes, that's right, Steam and Beer will return to Sittingbourne Steam Railway on the first weekend in July. On the Saturday there will be trains from 11 AM until late into the night, with live music to entertain you throughout the afternoon and evening. Captain Jack Sparrow returns on Sunday to entertain everyone. Trains will run from 11 AM until 5 PM. There will also be a barbecue on both days, plus the usual fare from the Footplate Cafe, and of course a wide selection of real ales and ciders from across the UK, while stocks last. Fares and timetables are currently being worked on. Check www.sklr.net for more information. So what's happening in June and July? June is a quiet month with no special events, so trains will depart Sittingbourne Viaduct hourly 1 to 4 PM every Sunday. Employees of DS Smith's Kemsley paper mill will be entitled to discount fares on presentation of their DS Smith ID card. July is a different matter, however. We start with our Steam and Beer event on Saturday the 1st and Sunday the 2nd. On the Saturday, trains will run from 11 AM until late, with live music and a barbecue. It's family day on Sunday, and Captain Jack Sparrow will return to entertain everyone with his antics, treasure hunt and pirate tales. Passengers dressed as a pirate will receive a prize. We have announced our draft beer list, which is available from the website. These are the beers we have ordered, but we won't confirm until they've arrived on site and have been tested that they are okay. Sometimes the beer doesn't travel well or reacts with the barrel, so we can't sell it. Don't forget that we are only getting small quantities of each, so when they're gone, they're gone. The 35 provisional ales are from across the UK, from Cornwall to Skye, and some locally from Kent. Many have entertaining names like Helter Skelter, and I'm asking for trouble with this one, She Sells Seashells, and you may even be able to ask for a pint of piddle or a good spanking. Next month I will be able to give you more information such as fares and train times. In the meantime, keep an eye out on our website or Facebook page. After Steam and Beer, we return to running trains hourly 1 to 4 PM on Sundays the 9th, 16th and 23rd of July. This is the start of our summer of Steam, with trains running every Wednesday and Sunday until the end of August. On Wednesdays from the 26th of July, trains will depart Sittingbourne Viaduct station hourly 1 to 4 PM. And Sundays from the 30th of July, trains will depart hourly 11 AM until 4 PM. We'll have more on this next month. Although a round trip can be achieved in under an hour, it is recommended that you spare at least 2 hours for your visit, particularly on special event days or if you are participating in the Wheels of Time activity. Return fares for 2017 are £7 for adults, £3 for children aged 3 to 15, £5 for concessions, and a family ticket valid for 2 adults and up to 4 children costs £19. Single and Rover fares are available. The away sales team will be representing the railway at the Rail Gala weekend at Amberley Museum and Heritage Centre on the 8th and 9th of July. The museum is alongside Amberley Railway Station in Station Road, Amberley, West Sussex, BN18 9LT. That's Bravo November 18 9 Lima Tango. 10 AM until 5 PM both days. More information can be found at www.sklr.net. and click on the This Week news item. Well, that's it. We're back at Sittingbourne Viaduct now. A light here for onward connections. This month we're going to look at the Great Whipsnade Railway at Whipsnade Zoo, Dunstable, Bedfordshire. Back in the late 1960s, railway preservation was taking off, following the shock of losing so many lines, locomotives, carriages and wagons. The nationalised railway was shrinking fast as modernisation was the buzzword of the day. So too did industrial railways. At Bowalters, a time and motion study was carried out and it was decreed that the railway should be closed down and replaced by more efficient road vehicles. The contrast to the railway's heyday during the 1950s was stark. Bowalters management wanted to see the railway preserved, at least in part, and that's how the current Sittingbourne Steam Railway came about. Earmarking the standard Barretto Matery class steam locomotives Alpha, Triumph and Superb, as well as the original engine Premier. Private individuals, groups and companies purchased the other locos, so as none were scrapped. At this time, a railway scheme was being developed to enable passengers to see the new Umfolozi rhinoceroses in their enclosure. Track and wagons, some later converted into coaches, were purchased from Bowalters in the late 1960s, and steam locomotives Chevalier, Excelsior, Conqueror and Superior arrived in 1970 to power the new line. Chevalier hauled the first trains on the Whipsnade and Umfolozi Railway in 1970. It is said that she once scared the rhinos with her whistle and was rammed by one beast which put a dent in the piston casing of the loco. A large brass bell was fitted and the rhinos were happy again. Originally just a plain single line out and back, it has been developed into a loop through various enclosures, departing from the station at Whipsnade Central. In 2010, Melia visited the Great Whipsnade Railway and worked with Excelsior and Superior on passenger trains around the loop, to celebrate 40 years of the railway's operation. Currently, elephants, rhinos, yaks and camels are some of the mammals you can see on your journey. Only Excelsior and Superior haul passenger trains now, Excelsior being the same as our Premier and Leader, and Superior being the original design that Alpha, Triumph and Superb are based on. To see Melia working on the line, watch SKLR Podcast 6 Part 2 from February 2011, which is available at stopham.libsyn.com or on the podcast app. Great Whipsnade Railway's Jumbo Express trains run daily until the end of September, then weekends the 1st to the 20th of October, daily for the school holidays 21st to the 30th of October, and then it closes until February 2018 half-term holidays. Fares are £4.50 for adults, including seniors, and £2 for children. Please note that this is on top of the entrance fee to get into the Zoological Society of London's Whipsnade Zoo. Tickets can be booked online at www.zsl.org. I can heartily recommend the zoo and the railway as it is a fantastic day out. You can even take your car into the zoo and go on safari. And that's it for this podcast. Thank you for listening. Sittingbourne Steam Railway podcast was written, narrated and produced by me, Paul Best. I would like to thank all the members and passengers at the Sittingbourne and Kemsley Light Railway and my many subscribers for their continued support. Special thanks to Nigel Thomas, the late Keith Twyman, Alistair Salmon, Joshua Chapman, John Fuller, Mike Fuller, Bill Kemsley, Tim Embleton, Keith Pearce and Mike Float for their help with the real world sound clips. If you have any feedback on the podcast or the podcast app, please email me at publicity@sklr.net. And here's a little bit of bonus footage. The day that I was writing the podcast, it was brought to my attention that Flying Scotsman would be visiting my local station of Fleet in Hampshire. So I went down there with the phone and videoed the arrival and departure of the Flying Scotsman. So here she is, arriving and departing from Fleet Station.
I've seen photographs of it. It's quoted as the Scotsman with an